What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justin Davis, and today I want to let you know about the Diatone Rabbit 249 HD that we're giving away by the end of the month. You don't have to be a Patreon to win this one. This one's a subscriber giveaway, so just check out the link down below where I have win a Diatone R249 HD in there, courtesy of Banggood and Drone Camps. Click that link and it's going to take you to sort of a tech website type of page. You can also click on that, sign up for the giveaway, and you'll be good to go. So the drawing will be done by them at the end of this month. Super sweet. We're also having another giveaway on the channel. The Emax Tiny Hawk 2 is going to give to one of my lucky Patreons on the channel. So 2 batteries in there, a 1S and a 2S battery, and all the rest of the gear in there, and an FrSky, built-in FrSky receiver. That's that SPI receiver on there. So pretty sweet. This one is ready to go. It's $99 value, and this one is like $180. So good luck to everybody on this month's giveaways.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Justin Davis. Welcome to the Sprinter van. I'm making some changes in here slowly, and things are starting to move around and get a little bit better for our setup in here, but we're on the road today and we're going to do another review of the Zohd Orbits. The Zohd Orbit Neon came out. It's kind of like the version 2.0 of the original Orbit I have sitting up here. It has flight controller in here, GPS, return to home, and all the bells and whistles. Full on OSD, latitude and longitude, and iNav on this one. And you can do the same thing with the Neon Orbit. It has a few minor changes that we're going to talk about on here, but the biggest change is the LED setup that they added for around $30 more for this version. It also comes with the famous Zohd Orbit flight controller on here, and it has stability mode for you beginners that have never flown a wing before. You don't have to worry too much, because when you put it up in stability mode and you let go of the sticks, the wing will auto level. Even on takeoff, I take off in stability mode with this, and it's really effortless to just put it in at about 3/4 to full throttle, launch it right out in front of you, and watch it climb up. It's really easy, probably my easiest launching wing with the least amount of crashes of any wing that I've ever flown on takeoff. So if you guys fly wings, you know that takeoff is probably one of the most sketchy times flying FPV wings. Speaking of FPV, you can go a step further, and we're going to talk about what type of iNav flight controller setup to put on there. This one has full GPS on here. You can hook it up to your computer and change a lot of the variables, and you can do that for about $50 now with this new setup that's come out. And I'm going to show you this a little bit. There's a full-blown version of it as well. What I think is really nice about this wing is not only can you knife fly at line of sight or FPV, you can pop this front end off right here, and once you do that, you can unplug the 12-volt source on the inside for the LEDs and slap your FPV camera on the front. So you can hot swap back and forth from FPV to your LED setup, which is really neat. You can also fly this wing on 3 and 4S, and if you're going to fly the LEDs, you either have to have a step down regulator on here, or you have to fly at 3S on 12 volt. If you fly it on 4S and you plug your LEDs in, you will fry them. So that's one thing that you have to look out for with this wing and your LEDs. Most LEDs are around 12 volt with a max of 12 volts. So be careful about that. That is going to be the max setup for your LEDs. But let's go ahead, let's go outside, let's do some flying with this. I'll show you the Neon setup that they have on here, top and bottom LEDs. It looks super cool. I can't wait to show you that. But after that, we're going to go out and do some long range flying with it, and I'll show you what kind of footage you can bring home on this Zohd Orbit Neon. It's actually pretty impressive, the footage that comes back from this wing. So let's go ahead and do some flying, and after that we'll come back into the studio and we'll take a little closer look at it and the new changes on the version 2 one on the bench. Here we go. Alright, let's go ahead and plug this battery in. I'm using the 3S2200 for this LED line of sight flight test, just to make sure I don't blow up my top or bottom LEDs. Look at that front spotlight. That thing is super bright. The darker it gets, the louder your LEDs become. It's super cool. Easy launch in stability mode helps a lot, and it really does turn on a dime. One thing that I was wanting you guys to notice is that the wingtips are flipping back and forth quite a bit, and there's a huge wind above me right now, probably about a 15 to 20 mile an hour wind. So I was really trying to find a field for this night flight test. The night before, I was going to do some editing on this to get it out to you guys, to keep it below the tree line, because man, it was really taking a lot of beating up high. So I did make some nice low passes, and that's one of the things I wanted to show you guys mostly about this plane, is the fact that it slows way down almost to about 40% throttle, and you can get a really nice slow cruise out of this plane. And what's neat about that for a proximity flyer or something like a long range or medium range flyer is that you can do higher throttle and you still get a pretty long flight time, around 15 minutes. And if you cut back on your throttle and reduce it to about 40% on your long range flights, you can get around 20 minutes on that 4S 1500. And as you're cruising at a slower throttle, it feels like you're going a really long ways out, when actually you're only a couple hundred feet away, which is kind of like when you're flying a smaller quadcopter in sort of a medium-sized field. It looks like you went way across the field when you crash, but you're actually only about 20 feet away. Same feeling with this wing when you get out there and do some distance flying. So the LEDs rock. I really like the way they have the LEDs set up top and bottom, and the spotlight on the front is super cool. So let me show you what it looks like when you slap a GoPro on there. And now we're flying the 4S 1550 battery from Tattoo with the Freewell ND16 filter on the front of my GoPro. So this is the kind of look that you're gonna get when you use the Freewell filter. If you have a GoPro Hero 7, this is a fairly sunny day. I would call it a normal day, which is a very rare day out on the Oregon coast, and it really does bring the blues and the clouds into view. If you're using something that is without any type of filter on it, you're going to get a lot of whiteout up above in the sky, so you're going to lose a lot of your clouds and the depth in your video. So most video professionals do use ND16 filters and a variety of filters, and I just got this pack from Freewell, so perfect time to take that out and test it. And I'll try to put their link down below for that as well, because this does two things really. It actually helps reduce the jello in your video on your aircraft, and it brings out the sky, and it actually, I think, it makes the colors a little more true. You don't have quite as much blue hue on a day like today. If there was a lot more fog out in the distance, we'd see more blue, but that's just what happens to the air when you have a lot of water molecules in the air. So today it's looking really, really nice. The water's super green, the sun is at full shine and really lighting up the grass really nice. And what's really cool about this brings me back to my days of sailplane flying. I could just cruise along the sand dunes at like less than 10 miles an hour on a 4S battery, just cut back on the throttle. Man, just cruise. This is just awesome. If you have never flown a wing before, this is quite different experience than flying a quad, because you're feeling all types of stuff when you're flying FPV with this wing. You're feeling sort of updrafts happening from the dunes, and especially when you take something like this up to the mountains, you can really get up there and kill the throttle and just glide forever with these wings. A lot of people that go up and paraglide also fly sailplanes because, well, they're already up there on the ridge, so they might as well do some slope soaring while they're up there. And these wings do quite well up there, and pretty much anywhere you want to send it. If I did crash it in the ocean, it will float also, and my GoPro Hero 7 is waterproof, so I can slow way down, and it feels weird because I'm going so slow with something as heavy as a GoPro Hero 7 on board. But that's why this wing is so popular, is because it really does have a nice flying characteristic. It doesn't have a lot of tip stall, and it really does fly well low to the ground. I'm not able to fly a lot of different type of multi-rotor this close to the ocean because I'm afraid that a little bit of spray is just going to take me out or short out my flight controller. With this, everything is pretty much covered up inside the airframe, so I don't worry about that as much. But let's head back to the bench now, and let's talk about this plane on the bench, and let's talk about the options that you have with this. It's like a kite without a string. I love this plane. Alright guys, welcome back from the flight test. What did you think about that flying characteristic of this wing? In the wind with the stability mode on, it did a lot of kind of fluttering back and forth, and it was kind of fighting to keep the wing level. So if you're flying in a lot of wind, I would say to take the stability mode off and fly it in pure manual, and it'll kind of smooth everything out. A lot like acro does. Once you start flying acro, it's kind of like someone's not holding the steering wheel anymore. The stability mode is great for beginners. If you're going to learn how to fly a wing, start out with that mode. After that, if it's a little bit windy, just flick into manual. Make sure you have some height when you do that, and you'll see everything start to smooth out, especially for your GoPro video. You do get a mount on the very top, which I love. You can put a strap through and around your GoPro. You might have to use some type of TPU mount for the Runcam 5 or some type of GoPro session mount on top of that. But good news is that this piece did not come off in this review. It did not break off. The last review I had for the original Orbit, they didn't have as much strength underneath here, and it popped off and sent my GoPro flying across the ground. But I like the fact that they did add the LEDs in this one. You get two different setups. You can use your GoPro in this mount right here if you want, and I have my FPV camera in this, and I just hot swap them back and forth, which is really nice. And this is supposed to be BEPP, so it's supposed to be biodegradable EPP foam, which is cool because it won't last a million years. We also have 9-gram servos in the very center of the fuselage, which this is very different from some of the other types of wings out there. This one is nice because even having my CROSSFIRE here and my VTX over here, if I want to break this apart for travel, you can do that. Same thing on this side. I have it ready to just come unplugged from my CROSSFIRE right here, and I can pull the whole thing apart and pack it up, and it goes in a pile just like that, super quick. Now the wing itself, the wingtip to wingtip measurement, it's 900 millimeters, which is actually 35.43 inches across. So it is kind of an average, like a medium-sized type of wing. It's not super big, it's not super small. It also has a nice surface area front to back, and it has a nice big bullnose on the front, so you don't have to worry about getting your CG correct. Some of the other wings out there, like the S800, in fact have a really short bullnose, and it's not stuck out from the front of the wing, which makes it harder to get the CG on point. Now I did notice that I had to change the location of my 4S 1550 on here. If I had my GoPro sitting here, I actually had to move it back one slot. So you do have enough room to scoot your battery back to here, just in front of this carbon spar right here, and then just run your strap around the carbon spar. Your battery should stay in place. You can also put some Velcro down back here. But the 3S 2200 without the GoPro, for my LED flying setup, the 3S 2200 goes all the way up front where they have the battery strap to begin with. That's the best spot for the LED setup flying. Now in the back of the wing, this is where the power setup is, and this wing is set up to be a cruiser. It has a very low kV motor. That is also going to give you a much longer flight time. So if you are wanting to do long range type of flying, you want to get the longest flight time possible, and you want to find the lowest point on your throttle stick that you can get to, say around 30 to 40% throttle, and that's going to give you much longer flight time out of your battery, much less amp draw coming from your motor. So we have a 2204 1870 kV motor here, so under 2000 kV. This is kind of with the secret sauce of this whole plane. If you want this plane to go faster and be sort of a race wing, you would have to upgrade it to something with super high kV, like 2750 or something. But honestly, it really doesn't need it. You wouldn't want to put a 2306 on the back of this and start hauling ass. You might as well buy something like the Sonic model, the mini version of their wing. That little black wing is going to be a much better race wing. But for long range cruising and like recreational flying and some pretty amazing cinematic filming, this is the best setup for that. They also use a proprietary style prop, which I'm not a big fan of, but go ahead and buy yourself a few packs of these and have these sitting around, because I know they're not going to stop selling them anytime soon, because the Orbit sells like crazy. A lot of people love this wing, and it's kind of like a 5-star wing with most people that own this. So you're going to be able to get props for it for some time, but the spin-on prop has worried me in my long-range type of flights. mainly because if you're a mile or two out there, you don't want to have a prop throw. But with the way they have this one set up, you just pretty much tighten it by hand, and once you have it just tighten enough with your fingers, it will stay on there. It does not come off. You will not throw this prop, most likely. And I've actually never broke a prop on landing, which is also kind of amazing. So in over a year worth of flying this plane, I've never broken a prop on a landing, and now I have probably 6 or 7 of these props in my shop just waiting as a backup. And that prop is also a 6x3, so it has not a lot of pitch. I like the fact that it is a low pitch prop as well, so it's not a super aggressive prop. With a low kV motor, gives you around a 20-minute flight time on a 4S 1550 battery. Now what I really do like about the Zohd Orbit is the fact that you have tons of room in here for adding GPS, flight controller, all that stuff. The original flight controller sits at the very bottom down here, and when you first get it, I removed this little piece of balsa right here. It's just a little piece of plywood that fits over everything. You can see your ESC through there. There's plenty of ventilation through here to make sure everything is nice and cool. I popped this out of here, and you can see it now that I have my CROSSFIRE servo board right here, and what I did to get the Zohd flight controller working with it was I actually switched the signal wire and the aileron wire were in this harness right here. So the yellow wire is the signal wire coming off of the flight controller, and so I just swapped out that single pin right there. That harness is plugged into the channel 2 on my CROSSFIRE board right here. So you can see that is channel 2 right there for aileron, and that goes to the flight controller right there. And then these 3 plug in right here on channel 1. So we have the signal right there. We have the power wire, which might be 5 volt, and we have the ground wire right there. And then down here we have our secondary channel for, I believe this one was, let me look in close here, elevator. And the next one down was your modes wire. So if you want to fly your different modes on a switch, you can hook that up to the signal pin on channel 4 back here. And that's the way you'd hook up your CROSSFIRE. And then this wire just goes over to your CROSSFIRE micro right there. Very easy to set up, and it works quite nice. I wish this wire was just a little bit longer, because I wanted this as far away from all of this as possible, just to give it a little more RF clearance so that there's no problem in miscommunication. Especially when I add GPS later in a flight controller, I don't want all that RF inside close to my receiver, especially if you're doing a long range type of setup. And right now you'll notice that it does have these 2 extra power sources coming off of your XT60 right here, and those are to power your LEDs. This one plugs into your headlight up front like this with the JST, and this is cool because you can use this to power an external VTX running your video system. So now I plug in this next one here, and that's for the LEDs outside in the wing. And now I unplug the wing and I unplug the headlight on the front, and I can grab my FPV camera over here, and I have, this is my VTX right here, and I just have it temporarily set up to VHB position on the outside of the wing because I want maximum cooling. Then I run my camera wire through here, I plug it into the back of my camera, and now I'm just about ready to do some FPV. If you're going to do this type of setup, what I would recommend you do is an LC filter in between the power setup. So what you can do is have an XT60 or a JST coming off of your VTX like this. Use this little adapter like this. This is an XT30 to a JST. And now I can plug this straight into my power source here. Now I'm powering my VTX and my camera. So my camera is also running off my VTX this way, and now I have power to my FPV system, and I can hot swap it as quick as that. Now for a long range type of setup, you're absolutely going to use an LC filter between this power connection, between where all the motor noise will come up through here and show up on your video screen. And an LC filter is really easy to set up. It's just positive and negative, and after that you'll have a nice clear FPV view on your screen. And then you can add your GoPro up front right here with a strap around it. And what I've started doing with my GoPro Hero 7, it is not painted orange yet, but I've started adding a tile on the back and then started to tether the tile off to something, and also keeping all of this together. The main point of the tile is that when I get close to it, that I can make this beep if it flies off of the plane, because I've had these fly off of a plane or a quad and it's almost impossible to find your Hero 7 in like deep tall grass. So this is just going to give me a way for my GoPro to beep. Now I wanted to show you guys this. If you're interested in doing some iNav on a Zohd orbit, this is probably the easiest way to do it right now on the planet without spending a whole lot of money. And I like to show you guys stuff like this because I'm always looking for a way to do this as cheap as possible. I really don't want to do a long range setup that I have $2,000 in or $1,500, because I have had those type of airplanes, and you know, if you fly out there a mile or so or more, you always know where it is, because you're obviously using CROSSFIRE, the full with the longitude, latitude on the very back, and you could go and find your aircraft. But you know, I would rather have something on there that if I did have a total loss, that I'm not going to just, you know, have a giant dent in my bank account because of that. So they have started doing these iNav setups on the Banggood website, which is super great because it gives you pretty much everything here you need to get iNav running on a wing or any type of quad setup. It does not come with a stand, which normally if you're running GPS on a quad, a lot of times I would like to do a stand. And that might seem kind of old school, but what it does is it separates the compass and the GPS away from any of the RF noise. Some other types of quads have had setups where the GPS is a little bit too close to the flight controller and the motor noise and everything. You don't want this GPS down on the level where your motors are. Same thing on the wing. You want your GPS on one side of the aircraft, and I would probably decase this as well. You don't really need all this plastic on the outside of this protecting it. It has an arrow in the front which tells you which way it goes. It's already soldered up to the flight controller, and this is a flight controller with iNav already flashed on it. It's also running a barometer on, which you need for iNav and GPS return to home. It also has a built-in compass on here. It does not have the version for the servos on here, so you'll need the breakout board version, which I'm going to put down there. It has an extra board that comes along with it, so you'll run it in a stack and your pins will kind of stick out the back or the side right here. And what you'll do is, after you have these pins soldered down to your PDB, you just plug in your servos, your servo plugs to them, 1, 2, 3, signal, 5 volt, and ground, and it will give you a schematic of that, and you can follow along with that. You can do your first wing build. It would actually be a lot of fun for you. And another suggestion I'm going to tell you guys if you're just getting into this is field test your return to home before you go 2 miles out, because I have seen so many people take their maiden on their long range setup and flick into return to home, ArduPilot, other types of flight controllers, even iNav, and then have a crash because they didn't have one thing set up right. So, you know, this is not super complicated, but some people like to make it super complicated, and then they have issues that they didn't see coming. So a lot of this might be in beta phase, beta testing phase, and we are the beta pilots. So keep that in mind, and always field test your return to home first before you go out on your long range mission. But I think this is a pretty easy way to get into it. This is the cheaper version without the PDB, and I think this one was around like $35 or something. The full-blown version with the PDB on the bottom that will make the stack and give you everything you need to put on here for iNav is around $55, which I think is a crazy awesome price for a plug-in, basically a plug-and-play setup. All you need to do is solder in your video transmitter and your receiver on here, and you can actually get some cables for that as well. So you can get out there and do some long-range flying, which would be super fun and different for a lot of you guys. So we're just about at the end of the review, and I have to say thank you for sticking through this review. If you're still watching at this point, you're one of my favorite dudes. Thank you for keeping your interest in this video, because wings to me are my favorite thing. If I went out on a road trip and I could only take one thing with me, I would take something like this, mainly because I can land it in a really short space. I can get a 20-minute flight time off of my typical quad batteries that I have already. Most of you guys already have the 4S 1500s in your bags, so you can use the same batteries from your quads on here. It breaks apart. You could put it in a backpack or not. It has quick release props on here, and if you want to add flight controller to this later, you can have the versatility to do that with GPS return to home and iNav. Also, the new incorporation of the LEDs is super cool. Just be careful that you don't plug in your 4S battery while these are plugged in, because it will fry your LEDs, everything all at once. So be super careful about that. This is only for 3S flying. Quick release props are nice. The option for the GoPro, obviously, and hot swappable magnetic camera mounts on the front also work pretty well. But 5 stars for me, because I feel like, honestly, this is probably the best aircraft that Zohd has ever made, and I think it was smart of them to do a 2.0 version of this. I would like to actually see that they come out with a Zohd Orbit Pro, something that really changed dramatically and add a little more value for the long range type of setup. I like that they include the flight controller for that price, for around $130, plug and play with all the electronics on it. It's just, and the LEDs is like the best deal out there on the internet right now. And the fact that if you're new, you have stability mode on here as well. So you have a ton of options with these wings, and they're durable as crap. So I love everything about it. It's in a way, I've got to say, it is the best wing or aircraft that Zohd has ever made, and they were right to do that version too. So they've it's going to be hard to outdo this wing. The Dart XL Extreme that I reviewed earlier on my channel is also a super awesome wing, and I got really excited because it looked like a mini Drac. It has a huge front end on it, and I can pack like a 4S 5000 in that beast, and I could go a lot faster than this one and cover a lot more ground. But the point of this one is the fact that if you do long range and you're flying at a slower level, it feels like you went a really long way, but you're only like a half mile out. And you don't have to go 6 miles out to enjoy that long range feel if you're going a little bit slower. I think that the mini Drac videos are really intense and they're really cool looking, but I have also seen a lot of mini Drac crashes because people are doing high speeds and trying to do some gaps a mile out, and you end up hitting something a mile out. But not what you really want to be doing is hiking out and trying to find all your gear. And I know most people in those mini Drac type of setups, they have close to $1,000 pumped into a single aircraft. So with the $55 setup and the flight controller here, and everything already electronics that are already on here, you're keeping yourself way under $500 for what I would really classify as a medium range type of setup with return to home, which is super awesome. But thanks again for watching my review, guys. This is a Titanic release from Zohd. I think they have another Grand Slam with this setup, and you can check out the link below for this GPS setup that I recommend. It's around $55. Guys, thanks again for subscribing, and good luck on the giveaways at the end of the month. I'm Justin Davis. Take care, guys. I'll see you on the next one.